Hello, my name is Alexander Schneck, and today I'll be teaching you how to use a Raspberry Pi to crack a WPA-enabled router. Now, this video is being made for my ethical hacking class at Florida International University. I am making it for completely educational purposes, and I do not wish for anybody to use these tools or skills in a way that could harm somebody else. This is solely for testing your own systems, as I am going to do in this video. So in this video, to do the project, we need a couple of main components first. We need the most important thing is we need the Raspberry Pi itself, which is this little guy here. So it has all sorts of different connections here. You have the HDMI power auxiliary, then a little SD slot here where you can load it with different operating systems. And in the back, I have a wireless Hdmi to pick up the Wi-Fi, and then a mouse and two extra ports here. You could also connect the Ethernet straight in if you like. For here, I'll be using the wireless though. So also, most importantly, we are going to be using Raspberry Pi in combination with Kali. So in order to get Kali onto the Raspberry Pi, we need to flash the disk image from the website, which I'll go over later, onto a micro SD card. So here I'm using the fastest one that they have out right now. I believe it's a UHS Class 3. For the purposes of Kali, it's recommended that you use a Class 4 or higher, and you need at least 8 to 16 gigabytes to do everything that you want to do. Now, aside from having a laptop and Raspberry Pi, you'll also need a Alfa, some sort of antenna. I find that these Alfa antennas work really well with Kali. On the back here, you can see the model number. It ends in an H. It's AWU something something H, right? So there's different models. There's H or NH, NR, something like that. But the H models are the best and most compatible with Kali. So I definitely recommend going with that one. Some of the other things that we need to do that we have laying around here are HDMI cable, the power source for Kali or for the Raspberry Pi, because when you order it doesn't come with a power source, so you have to provide your own. So usually I just use a battery backup that I have for my phone, and it works perfectly. You just need a 5-volt battery source with, I believe, somewhere in between 0.8 and 1.6 amps being supplied to the device. So aside from that, I'm using an old keyboard to type onto the terminal on the Raspberry Pi, and I believe that's everything you really need. I'll provide a list in the description to make it a little bit easier. So just quickly, I'd like to go over what the Raspberry Pi is and what is Kali. So the Raspberry Pi, it's pretty much just a small computer in a sense. It has its own processor. This model has 1 gigabyte of RAM on it, and you can put it supports almost all distributions of Linux, and it's a really powerful little machine here. You can use it for all sorts of different projects that you like. You can be a media player. You can use it to remotely control different devices using Z-Wave controllers and such. But it's a great portable tool that you can use in little projects, and it doesn't cost too much. It's really promoted in schools as a low-cost tool to learn programming. But here I'm going to be loading it with Kali and trying to make it a portable testing tool. Also, you can get one of these little guys too. It's a little screen that you can attach to the top of it, 3.5 inches, and it works well to make it portable so that you don't have to carry around a monitor. So that's the Raspberry Pi. It's really good. It's definitely something to look into more. And then also what we'll be using is Kali, which is a penetration tool, security's dream in a sense, because it has so many different tools on the operating system itself. So it's really a powerful distribution of Linux that has been around for quite some time, and it has all the tools that we're going to need. The Raspberry Pi is a specific disk image compared to the other one that's designed for the laptops. So the Raspberry Pi edition, you could say, or the image, is a little bit dumbed down and doesn't have all the tools that the normal distribution of the laptop has. So it may seem less powerful on the Raspberry Pi, but as I'll show later, you can install different programs that it doesn't come equipped with. So it's just as powerful. You just have to know what you're doing and be selective with which programs you install. So we'll go ahead and do that and set up. I'll show you how to set up the Raspberry Pi and install the disk image. Okay, now that we have the Raspberry Pi, we need to set it up with Kali. So to do this, we have to go to the Kali Linux downloads from Offensive Security. Here, they have different options for the Raspberry Pi. Make sure to select the ARM images. They're designed for the processor on the Raspberry Pi. So since I have the Raspberry Pi 2, I'm going to go ahead and download this image, right? So luckily, I already have that downloaded and ready to go. So before installing it on the SD card, a good program to use to format the SD card is SD Formatter. So make sure you select the right drive. Notice here, I do not want to erase my school drive. So I need to make sure that the SD card is being recognized by my computer and make sure that I select the correct drive before formatting it. Okay, so now after we format it, we have to go through the Win32 disk imager, right? So here we push the little icon over here and we look for where we have the image file. So here we select it. And then select the correct drive and then write it. So make sure, can't say it enough, make sure you select the right drive before you write the image. So I already have my SD card set up. As soon as this is writing, then you're good to go. So then you just pop that SD card into the Raspberry Pi and then we can boot up from Linux. Notice here my Raspberry Pi is pretty much wireless aside from the HDMI connector to the screen. So it's pretty portable. You can even make it more portable by including a screen that goes on top of the Pi that will act as a monitor instead of having to lug around a screen. This is what the Raspberry Pi looks like when you boot up in Kali. The following screen will be the login screen. For the default login, it'll be root, and the password will be Tor, or root backwards. In order to use the SSH tunnel from PuTTY, we need to be on the same network. So I'm going to log in to my Raspberry Pi and use the GUI with the command start x. Is the main loading screen of Kali Linux off of the Raspberry Pi. Now I'm going to connect to my network here so that I can update the Pi with all the necessary tools that we are going to be using. So notice here the Netgear 76 is my home router that I'll be using, and the same router that we will be cracking later on. The connection has been established. We want to start the terminal down here and find the IP that was assigned to us. To do this, we use ifconfig, and then we want to look for the IP address depending on whether we connected to Ethernet or over a wireless connection, and that can be found here. Now this will be used to create the SSH tunnel so that we can command the Raspberry Pi remotely from the computer. Now in the PuTTY, we want to create an SSH tunnel. So here we put the IP address of the Raspberry Pi, and then we can create a session name to use it. So we want to save that session, and then now we want to open it. When it will ask you for a prompt, if you trust the computer, you trust the Pi, so click yes, and then you'll be given this screen, which is just the terminal. So here we log in the same as we did before to the root user using the username root and then the password Tor. So after that, we can use it as if it was just the normal Raspberry Pi from except now we are using it from the laptop. So here we want to set up the Raspberry Pi and make sure it has all the programs that we need in order to test the router. So to do this, we want to install a couple of programs and just a couple of extra just for good measure. To do this, we do apt-get space install and Reaver. This will be the program that we'll be using to crack the WPA encryption of my router. So here we push enter and we wait for it to install it. And then after it's finished installing, then we'll go ahead and continue to install any other necessary programs. So for the purpose of this video, I'll only be cracking the router and then running a port scan, but I'm also going to show that although the Raspberry Pi is relatively small, it is very capable in doing multiple tasks. So I found it very interesting that another program that we can install that's quite powerful is Metasploit. So here, this program is used quite often to exploit machines, and you just want to go ahead and get familiar with it if you intend on doing any further penetration testing. So after all these, after the programs are done, then we want to update them. So to update them, it's pretty much the same way as before. Okay, so let's go ahead and clear the screen. So now, in order to make sure that everything in the Pi is updated, we just want to do apt-get and then type update. So this will just go through and make sure that everything is up to standards. Okay, now again, let's just clear the screen to make sure that we have a clean working space here. So now we're going to use the program Reaver to crack the router. It exploits the fact that WPS is usually enabled in routers. It provides an extra convenience when connecting devices, but it's a big loophole in a security measure because Reaver can crack it in 2 to 10 hours. So the first step in our attack is we have to run airmon-ng to see our adapters and make sure that they have the appropriate drivers, and also to see what wireless LAN they're on. So here we see that the Alfa antenna that I have is on WLAN 1. Now we want to start recording with the antenna. So to do this, we write the following command, and we write WLAN airmon-ng start WLAN 1, and then it will start monitoring on mon 0. Now, most of the time you want to try to kill these PIDs, but for the purpose of this video, it's not necessary. So here, the next command, we're going to search for possible networks that are vulnerable to the type of attack that Reaver executes. So to do this, we write the following command. It's wash-i mon 0-C. So now with this command, it will look for the various networks that are around that have the WPS that are not locked. Now here we have my router, which is the one that we want, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the scan by doing Control-C. Here we want to write down the BSSID because we will be using that later. So take note of that and then clear the screen. The next command that we are going to run is the actual Reaver command. So it is as follows here. We want to type Reaver-i mon 0-b, and then we need to put the BSSID of the router that we are targeting. So here is the BSID of my router. Then after that, we do -VV, Victor Victor. Now we just push enter and let it run. So usually this type of attack will take anywhere in between 2 and 10 hours. Here, as you can see, after running the Reaver command, the Pi is going to work. It's trying all the different pins and guessing them to try to be able to crack the password associated with the WPS of the router. Now I'm going to let this run and then come back to it and see if it cracks the password. Here we can see after a long time, or 11,277 seconds, which equates to about 3 hours, we found that the password is hack ethically! For my Netgear 76 router. Now the next step, we will continue. First, let's clear the system so that we have a clean workspace. Also, if we forgot to write down the password, we can repeat the most recent command and you will see that it cracks it a lot faster in 7 seconds. So now we write down the password and prepare to connect to the network to run some scans on it. Now that we've gotten into the network, I'm going to run a scan to see what open ports there are on the devices in the network. So to do this, we use the Nmap command, right? So the Nmap is a scanner. The different options that I have here do different things. The -N makes it so that there's no DNS resolution. The SV checks for open ports, and then -O checks for the possible operating systems that the device might be running. So here I'm scanning the network. The devices on the network, the IPs the last number will only change since it's a Class C. So here we're going to start at the very beginning and end at the very possible last device. So sometimes, depending on the size of the network, you may need to do multiple scans if there are a large amount of devices on the network. So here we're just going to put enter and let the Nmap program run. This may take a while, so I will be back once it's completed. One thing you can do to check how the progress of the scan is going is you can push one of the up arrows or click or enter, and it will tell you the progress and how much time has elapsed and how many different hosts there are and such. So here it tells me that's 80% done, so we are almost there. The scan has finished running, and these are the devices that are on my network. So notice that some of my devices have a lot of ports open, and you can tell by the device what it is. So here it says Apple, so we know it's an Apple device, and then over here it says a media device. So guessing from the AirPlay here, it must be an Apple TV on the network. So it's nice to see what devices there are and the different possible exploits or security tests that you could do on those devices. So here it's another thing. You see it's a printer. So then you can go to CVE details or some other exploitation website and check what vulnerabilities they have on possible printers. So that's another one. And then here's my laptop. And I noticed that they have an OpenVNC here, which you use for doing a PuTTY, but in a GUI version so that it's not in the terminal. So I noticed that this is a possible vulnerability that I need to close. So it's good to run these types of scans on the network so that you know what vulnerabilities there are on your computer and what you need to close so that you have a more secure network. I'm going to stop the project here because there are a lot of things that you can go with this. As I showed earlier, you can install Metasploit with the Raspberry Pi and then continue in that avenue. You can use any type of tool that Kali has to offer on the Raspberry Pi. You just have to install it using the app-get command. So I think this is a good example of what the Raspberry Pi is capable of. It's pretty powerful to be able to crack a router with a password of any length because it goes by using the pins associated with the WPS. and then to be able to connect to that network and run a port scan and see what devices are on it. That's pretty powerful. And then you could take it from there and see how you want to check the vulnerability of your system. And I just want to emphasize once again, do not use this for any malicious manner. This is tools for your own testing, or if you're a security professional, but please do not test this on other people because it is illegal. Just use this video for educational purposes for yourself, and it should be fun. Just remember that if you ever want to use any sort of test for, say, a family member or a friend, always get written consent first and make sure that both parties are aware of what exactly you're doing. So aside from that, this project was very interesting. I had a lot of fun with it, and I hope that I can continue working with this and possibly post some more videos for you guys to look at.